Hello everyone, Chip Boaz here, and today I'm going to talk about playing major triads on the 6-string bass. I'm going to start out with some theoretical background on major triads. I'm going to get into some basic triad shapes that you can play on 4, 5, or 6-string bass. And then I'm going to get into playing those major triads across the neck of the 6-string bass or up and down the full register of the instrument. I wanted to let you know that if you want to download written copies of all this information, including notation and tablature, you can do that through the link in the description. So if you're interested, check that out, but let's get going. So what is a triad? It's a 3-note chord that serves as the foundation for most of popular music. There are more complex chords that you can play, but the triad is always the foundation, and so it's really important to have a good handle on these. When we refer to major triads, we say things like A major, D major, or E major. There's two parts of that name. When I say A major, I'm saying that the root of the triad is an A. The root is the note that serves as the foundation for the triad. So everything's built off that A, and then the major part of the name is what's called the chord quality. This describes what sort of sound the chord makes. Now, all triads are built upon a corresponding scale. This is something called chord scale relationship. If I take an A major scale and I play that, I've got 7 notes in that scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This last note, you might consider it's the 8th note, but it's the same as our first note. That's an A, so that's where the 7 notes start over again. But we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, a triad consists of the first, the third, and the 5th note of the scale. So if we go through the scale, first note's obvious. That's the one we start with, right? We go 1, 2, 3. That's the second note of the scale. I've got the first and the third note of the scale. 3, 4, 5. There's the first, the third, and the 5th note of the scale. That gives me the triad. Now that's where the names for each one of the notes of the triad come from. We call them the root, the third, and the 5th, right in there. You can go through all your major scales and figure out your major triads. If you're interested in learning more about major scales on the 6-string bass, you can check out this video that I did on that very topic. Now, that's not the only way that you can build a major triad. It's probably the easiest, but you can also stack intervals. A major triad is built of a major third followed by a minor third. Now, if that's a little confusing right there, okay, you can figure it out by breaking that major third and minor third down into half steps. Which a half step equals a fret, so it's easy to figure out on the bass. A major third is 4 half steps. So I start here and I go 1, 2, 3, 4. That note's my third then. All right, you'll notice that I did that all on one string to figure that out. That's where things get a little confusing. You need to know, okay, that's a C sharp. C sharp's also there. From there, you go up a minor third, which is 3 frets. You start there, you go 1, 2, 3, and you've got your 5th right there. And once again, we've got all of that stuff in there. I would also recommend that you know the note names on each fret of your instrument. So when you play something like an A major triad, you can know that the notes of that triad are an A, a C sharp, and an E. That's good information that'll get you a long way. when you play a major triad on the bass, you can play it in one of two ways. You can play all three of those notes at the same time to sound a chord. Might look a little something like this. Or you can play what's called an arpeggio, where you play those notes one at a time. We're going to focus on playing arpeggios here because while you can play chords on the bass, especially the 6-string bass, it's more practical to have those arpeggios under your fingers because they form the foundation of things like bass lines and melodies and solos. So that's what we're going to be doing. There are 3 basic shapes that you can play a major triad on the bass. These involve starting with different fingers. It's really practical to know all 3 because when you're trying to play in one position, which is a really important part of using the register of the 6-string bass, having all those shapes under your fingers will allow you a lot more freedom. Now you'll find that these shapes take up only 2 to 3 strings, so they can be played on a 4-string bass, a 5-string bass, or a 6-string bass. But they serve as good foundational material that you'll see in a minute when we start applying it to the full register of the 6-string bass. We're going to play off of A major again, and we're going to start with the most basic triad right there. That starts with your 2nd finger on the root. You play the 3rd with your 1st finger and the 5th with your 4th finger. All right, you'll find that that shape is really convenient to play and works in a lot of good situations, a lot of bass lines. Will be just that triad shape right there. The 2nd shape starts with your 1st finger, all right? And notice this one's going to force you to stretch a little bit to get to the 3rd. We're going to play the root with our 1st finger, then on the same string, we're going to stretch up to grab the 3rd with our 4th finger, and then on the next string, we'll grab the 5th with our 2nd finger. Okay, right there to get that all under your fingers. Now, this may take a little bit. Try to think again using your thumb right there as more of kind of a lever to just allow for that shift, okay? Instead of really like stretching out and tensing up those fingers. The 3rd shape generally starts with your 4th finger. Now I'll show you, you can use your 3rd finger here, but it's way more convenient. It sits under your hand a lot better if you use that 4th finger. All right, so I'm gonna put 4th finger on my root, that A. I'm going to grab the 3rd of the chord with my 3rd finger on the next string, and then one more string up, I'm going to grab the 5th with my 1st finger. So we get right there, okay? Now for a lot of people, this may be the toughest one because it involves your 4th finger, but it's so important. Like say, for example, you're playing a G major triad right there and you need to get up to A. It's so much more convenient to grab it with your 4th finger. Or here's a super practical thing that you might encounter. Say you're playing, let's go back to A. Say you're playing an A major triad and you need to get to the 5 chord, the E. It's right there under your 4th finger. Having all these shapes will go a long way. Now, I mentioned that you can play this one with your 3rd finger. I don't recommend it, but if you want to get your 3rd finger into the action, you can play your 3rd finger on the root, your 2nd finger on the 3rd, and then you got to stretch out your 1st finger to get the 5th. All right, this is not a super practical way to play it, but it is a possibility. Remember, the beauty of this is once you've got all those shapes, the bass is a symmetrical instrument, so you can grab those shapes and play them anywhere. right? And it's always going to be a major triad. When you do that, you got to keep track of your root, all right? But you can play that anywhere, and it's going to be the same chord quality. Check those out and give them a try. When we apply those major triads to the 6-string bass and play them across the neck, we can get anywhere from 2 octaves to 2.5 octaves, depending on the position and depending on the key. And that is all without shifting. You can get a solid 2 octaves by starting on the E string and using the top 5 strings. This involves putting 2 of those shapes together. I'm going to play an A major triad starting with my 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the E string and play across. All right, I just played 2 octaves. Now notice, to do that, I played the first shape I showed you that starts on the 2nd finger, and the 2nd shape I showed you that starts on the 4th finger. You put those 2 together, there you go. You've got 2 octaves in any position. Now you can stretch that out by playing the B string as well, okay? But to make this work, you're just not going to start on the root of the chord. You're going to start on the 5th of the chord. All right. So I'm going to play that A major triad again across the neck, but I'm going to start on the 5th. That extends your range just a little bit. Pretty cool. You can also get a little bit more than 2 octaves by starting on the B string if the key sits in that register. So we're going to stay in the same position, okay, and we're going to start on the 5th fret. This time it's going to be an E major triad because that's the root that I'm starting with. Okay, check this out. All right. Notice I'm doing the same thing. I'm playing the first shape I showed you, followed by the shape that starts on the 4th string, and then I'm jumping up to the root on the 6th string. I put it all together. I've got a little more than 2 octaves right there in the key of E, playing all 6 strings. Really practical and draws upon the strength of having those 2 extra strings on your bass. Now you can use a series of shifts to play from the lowest part of the 6-string bass all the way up to the highest part of the 6-string bass. Now why would you want to do this? Because this will give you a 3 to 4 octave register, which is just awesome. The only keys that'll allow you a full 4 register shift is the key of B and C, and that's because you've got a low B string and a high C string. So just register wise, that's what's going to get you there. But if you're playing in those keys, it's a cool hat trick to pull out. Let's check out C major triad in 4 octave. Pretty cool. Just because you can't play a full 4 octaves in keys outside of C and B doesn't mean you can't reach past the 3 octave point. In most cases, you can grab the 3rd, if not the 5th, to extend that arpeggio a little bit. Let's check that out in the key of G, where you can grab the 3rd above that last octave. Pretty cool stuff. So I hope that helped you learn a little bit more about major triads, get that info in your brain and under your fingers so you can expand your musical horizons as a bass player. Don't forget, you can download all of that information, including notation and tablature, through the link below. Check that out and dig even deeper. Also, if there's other topics you want me to cover around theory, technique on the 6-string bass, let me know down in the comments. I would love to explore that with you. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit subscribe and turn on notifications, and I will see you soon.